Hello everyone, my name is Maxime Coquerel. I'm very happy to be here today with you to talk about security. I know security is not a fun topic, but for a lot of developers, but I will try to do that funny. I work for RBC, for the Royal Bank of Canada. I'm also from Quebec City, as you can hear my French accent. I apologize for that. And I'm also a member of the MVP group. MVP, it's Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. It's a community group for people passionate about Microsoft technology. I'm a tech blogger. You can find me on X or on LinkedIn. If you have any question during this talk, do not hesitate to interrupt me. Or after this talk, that will be my pleasure. And I'm very happy to see some coworkers from RBC in the room. And thank you for that. A quick disclaimer, any view or opinion expressed in this presentation, that is only my opinion and not necessarily the opinion of RBC or my previous employer. I have no choice to have a slide like that. Okay, quick introduction, because I believe it's important to bring up everyone up to speed about Kubernetes, because I believe some people are new with the Kubernetes platform. But from an high-level perspective, we have two main components, if I can say that. We have the control plane, that is a brain, that is the brain of the system. And inside the control plane, for this presentation, we have two sub-components, very important. We have the etcd cluster, that is a key value cluster where you will store the Kubernetes configuration, your Kubernetes secret, and also we have the API server in this case. And on the right of this slide, you have the worker part. And for this presentation, what is important to understand, the worker part, that is a virtual machine where your container will run. You have the container runtime. In this case, that could be Docker, Containerd. And also, it's important to understand the interaction between the API server to the worker node via the kubelet. That is a subcomponent, and the role of this subcomponent is to do that. In reality, it's more complex, but that is just a 20-second introduction. And now, if we go more deeper with this talk, you will see me, Max, why I need to do a security assessment. What the values that will bring to my organization, because that is the main concern. No one wants to do a security assessment for fun, because security is not fun for developers, for cloud ops, because a lot of the time we try to say, no, you can't do that, but we try to change the mindset. But to answer to this question, that is very important for two reasons. The first reason, if you are a regulated company, like a financial company, an insurance company, you have no choice to prove evidence to your regulator. You are following some security best practice, and you are doing some due diligence about that. And for me, the second option, that is not the least, for me that is the most important option, is to know the level of your Kubernetes security posture. Because as you know, Kubernetes is a Kubernetes platform is something of very complex. And it's impossible from the beginning to have an highly secure platform. That will be a continuous improvement exercise. And to do a security assessment that will help you to know the level of your security posture, the different risks and threats you have in your platform. And I believe that is very complex to start, because you would say to me, okay, Max, now I need to start from where? Because I have a lot of components to audit, and if you do a simple Google research, you will see some Kubernetes threat matrix. That is a matrix of threat released by Microsoft. That will help you to have some insight about which threat, which component you should to audit in your Kubernetes cluster. But that is still high level. And additionally to that, the OWASP team releases the Kubernetes OWASP top 10 with the top 10 misconfiguration and threats for your Kubernetes platform. That is also still high level. And what I would like to offer you with this talk, it's a simple methodology you can apply, and we will try to see that deeper. The assessment methodology for me, the first thing is work with your team and define a scope. for each of the different points of this methodology, I will go deeper after that in this presentation. That is define a scope. After that, that will be identify which component you want to audit, because it's impossible for you from day one to audit all the different components. After that, I believe it's also important to review the different container image you are using in your platform. Additionally to that, you will review the public exposed services, because I believe you have some public ingress endpoint. You are also maybe using some Kubernetes cluster. Sometimes the API manager could be directly exposed to internet. In this case, it's very bad practice, but sometimes it's something we can see that. And after that, you will review the Kubernetes configuration, and you will review that based to a framework. I will recommend you, in this case, to use a framework like CIS framework. I will go deeper after that to explain you what is CIS. But a lot of organizations, they have their own internal standard, and they want to be compliant with this standard. And after that, you will maybe review the airbag configuration, review the pod privilege, the different security control of your Kubernetes cluster. You want to review the network policy, and you want also to know, because a lot of people are using Kubernetes with a cloud provider in the managed services, like with AKS, for example, in Azure, or EKS in AWS. And sometimes, if you have a compromission in your Kubernetes cluster, what the attacker want to do is to try to pivot and to do some lateral movement to the other resource deploy in your Azure subscription or AWS account, for example. And at the end, not the least, generate a report and to do awareness, because it's good to do security assessment, but it's better to share that with your developer, with your team, because at the end, you want to have everyone on the same page and bring everyone up to speed to increase your security posture. As I said, define a scope. That is the first thing, and I have seen a lot of assessment failing because the scope is too large, but it's very important in this case to define which scope you have. In this case, we have three scopes that could be a black box, gray box, or white box. That is similar to what pen testers are doing. When they are doing an assessment, they define a black box. A black box, no one knows this assessment is in progress. The gray box, some people know the assessment is in progress, and the people or the team who will do the assessment will have some internal access to do the assessment. And the white box, the people or the team who will do the assessment, they have a fully access to all the documentation, to the developer team to do the assessment, and they can ask a question. Based on my experience, lot of security assessments specifically for Kubernetes are between gray box and white box. Okay, now to answer to the question, which component should be audited? In this case, I believe we have three main categories. We want to audit the container. We want to audit the container image, because that could be a vector of compromission, because a lot of image can contain some CVE. Additionally to that, you want also to review the image pool policy. What that mean? I will give you a real example. If you have a reader account in Azure, by default, you are allowed to pull all the image from an Azure container registry, because that is by design by Microsoft. You can check on the Microsoft documentation. That is publicly documented. After that, you want to review the deployment configuration. You want to review your Kubernetes manifest. You want to be sure you have request and limit defined. You want to be sure you don't have pods running as root, for example. And additionally to that, you want to review the Kubernetes cluster configuration, because as you know, when you deploy a Kubernetes cluster, if you deploy the Kubernetes cluster from scratch, the cluster will be empty. But I'm sure you want to do a network policy for that, and maybe you want to have some advanced feature. You want to deploy a solution like Calico. You have maybe some additional add-on. For example, if you are using Flux, for example. And also, what I believe it's also important to review, as I said before, is the airbag configuration, the network policy, and the kubelet configuration. Okay, why it's important to review the container image? Because a lot of container image contain hard-coded sensitive information. That could be some API key, SSH key, certificate, password. It's very fun. If you go directly to Docker Hub, you can pull some container image, and you can try to inspect the container image. You can natively use Docker with a simple Docker inspect command. You will see the different layer of the component of the container and try to find this type of information. And also because a lot of containers contain a lot of vulnerabilities, and I'm be sure you don't want to have your vulnerability in your cluster. About container image, also what is very important to do that is because a lot of people think about, okay, I will review the container image for my application, but in reality, your Kubernetes platform use also some container image like kubedns, for example, and it's very important to keep this container up to date. Okay, if you want to automate that, and if you want to do that, I will invite you to use Gripe. Gripe, it's an open source solution, and that will help you to scan your container image and identify the different CVE, and also if you have any hard-coded sensitive information included in your container image. Yes. Additionally to that, that is another tool to do the same thing. That is Aqua3V. That is also an open source tool you can use. And in this example, for example, I scan an old image of Nginx, and as you can see, I have some vulnerability with a severity level as high, medium, low. And I have information on my different vulnerability. Also, a quick recommendation about that is good to scan the image before to do the deployment, but it's also very good to rescan your running image in your container, in your cluster. Okay, and also with 3V, what is great is also you can scan your Kubernetes manifest to identify if you don't have any. For example, privileged container, any privilege running as root, you want to detect that before to do the deployment. That is also available with a 3V. Okay, as I said before, if you remember my slide of introduction about the Kubernetes architecture, one critical component is the API server. And a lot of people are using Kubernetes with the managed services like EKS, for example, in Azure, or EKS in AWS. But this API server could be exposed publicly to internet. And what is funny to do is when you are doing an assessment like that, if you want to check if the API server is directly exposed to internet, with a simple NS lookup request, you can do that, because that is an example with Azure EKS, because Microsoft, they are using a public DNS to register private and public IP of an API server, of the EKS API server. And in this case, in my example, I have a private API server configured with an Azure private link, and when I did my NS lookup, I have a private IP versus to do a public API server. Because if someone can access to your API server and can steal some credential, if he has access to the API server, he can compromise your Kubernetes cluster. And lot of Kubernetes component could be also misconfigured and exposed to internet. And I'm sure you will see, Max, that will not happen to me, because I'm sure I have a good networking segmentation in place. But if you use, for example, a search engine like Shodan, you will see a ton of Kubernetes API server directly exposed to internet. Some Kubernetes API server, the anonymous access is allowed. Same thing with the etcd. A lot of etcd clusters are directly exposed to internet. And if you remember what I said in the when I started my presentation, in the etcd cluster, you have the Kubernetes configuration, you have the Kubernetes secret, and if someone accesses to that, it's game over for you. And also you have also you can have also some information like the kubelet related to the kubelet because by default the kubelet information exposure it's a big thread that will give information to an attacker about which container are running in your cluster or not. And you have an example here. Okay, now if we talk about Kubernetes configuration, because I want to be sure you are interested to know your Kubernetes, your API server should be configured to private. Additionally to that, you want to follow some best practice to keep your cluster hardened. And to do that, the CIS, I believe it's a group of security people. Now it's a company behind that, but they created a benchmark, and in this benchmark you have close to 100 check. And that is the best practice we recommend to follow to keep a cluster up to date. And maybe you are familiar with other CIS benchmark for Windows, for Windows Server, for example. They provide you some hardened guide, and I will recommend you to consult that. And additionally to that, if you want to automate all this 100 check because you want to have an idea, you want to have quickly an idea about the level of the security posture of your Kubernetes configuration, for that you can use some open source tool like Kubebench, and that will automatically give you an idea about which control pass, which control fail. And what is also very interesting with a tool like that is you can create your own control, and you can import your own control in Kubebench, specifically if you have an internal framework inside your organization. Okay, and you can do the same. You can do the same thing with KubeEscape. With KubeEscape, you can scan your Kubernetes cluster. You can scan also your Kubernetes manifest, and that will give you some baseline about the CIS benchmark, and about also some additional benchmark like MITRE, for example. That is an example of scan, and what is important to do is what is important to identify. In this case, you have a compliance score, and that will help you to track and to see maybe when you will start your assessment, your first assessment, you will have a compliance score close to 20 or close to 30, and maybe 1 year after that you will have a compliance score close to 80%, and that will help you to follow the progression of your different remediation and give information to your management. Okay, that is not the list. Airbag configuration review. For me, that is a critical piece of a Kubernetes cluster because airbag is something very complex to put in place in a Kubernetes environment, and it is also something very complex to audit. Specifically, if you have some shared Kubernetes cluster with multiple teams, multiple apps. That is something of complex, and when you are doing a security assessment, I will encourage you to review that and put a priority to do a review for that. Specifically because, as you know, Kubernetes is using a lot of service account. You will have a lot of internal identity inside the cluster, and also some service account could be defined with overly permission, and you don't want to do that. And I put on the slide 5 main techniques to escalate privilege inside the Kubernetes cluster, and as you can see, if you are, as you can see, a lot of attack will start with an application compromise in the Kubernetes cluster. This application uses service account. The attacker will use this service account to do some lateral movement, and after that, compromise all the cluster. And also, that is something a bad practice you should avoid is when you are deploying your airbag configuration for your Kubernetes cluster. A lot of people use for API group, resource, verb, they use star. Try to avoid star and try to use only the Kubernetes verb you need to put in place. try to have a strategy to follow least privilege. Sometime I review some external vendor manifest, and for them it's very simple to put star everywhere and that's all. But try to challenge that. I will recommend you to do that. Okay, and to audit and to have a quick idea about the security posture of the airbag part of your cluster, I will invite you to use a tool like Kubiscan that will help you to identify which risky role, which cluster role, also to identify the role binding, cluster role binding in place in your cluster, and that will give you an idea about the posture. That is very simple. It's very easy to run that in your cluster. You will have in a few seconds an idea about your posture. I'm pretty sure at 90% of the case the posture will be not great because that manage airbag configuration inside the Kubernetes cluster. It's very, very challenging to do that. Okay, cool. And now if you're an attacker, because a lot of people try to deploy security control inside their cluster. For that, they are leveraging solutions like OPA Gatekeeper or Kyverno to create security policy to do that. To create, for example, some security policy to say, okay, we don't want to have this container running as root. But as people who are doing some assessment, sometimes you don't have access and you don't have the right permission, or you don't know which security policy is in place. I will invite you to use Badpod. Badpod, it's a GitHub repo where you have some Kubernetes manifest to deploy some malicious pod inside the cluster. You have 8 scenarios. In this case, I will invite you to run that and try to identify if we have any failure related to that. The result could be very funny. Yeah. Okay, that is another tool, Checkov. That is another open source tool. Behind Checkov is Prisma Cloud. That will help you also to analyze your Kubernetes manifest and give you some idea about your finding. For example, in this case, I have a simple Nginx deployment, and my container run with allow privilege escalation. That means my container is allowed to do privilege escalation in my cluster. And I will invite you to use a tool like that to audit your Kubernetes manifest. Okay. Same thing, you have another similar tool created by Shopify, Kubernetes, that is very similar of Checkov. Yeah, that is an example. Okay, cool. Now if we are talking about Kubernetes network policy is also a big topic in Kubernetes cluster, because by default, if you are using just a Kubernetes cluster, as I said, with a configuration from scratch, without any service mesh or any advanced CNI, in this case, it's the same thing. You are all your pods are connected to network layer 2, and if you don't apply a network policy, by default, all the pod can talk together. And it's also important to, in this case, when you apply network policy, you have 2 levels where you can apply network policy. You can apply network policy at the namespace level or at the pod level. And in this case, in my recommendation, it's if you don't have any network policy in your cluster, you have some running workload in your cluster, try to apply the network policy at the namespace level. Try to isolate your different workload in different namespace and apply the network policy at this level. And if you think your Kubernetes, and if you think your pod should not talk with another pod and other external services, start with a deny all approach. Put in first a role to deny all the traffic, and after that you will add some granular role to allow the network communication. Okay, cool. Now, also what is very important to review is to review how an attacker could pivot to a cloud provider. In this example with Microsoft Azure, I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago that was possible to, and that is still possible to do that, but not from the Azure portal. That was possible to deploy EKS cluster with service principal. And what was funny in this case is a service principal, and the service principal secret was hard-coded on every node in the Azure JSON file. And if someone compromise or do a privilege escalation from a pod to access to the node of your cluster, he can steal this service principal, and after that he can use this service principal to access to your Azure subscription. And what is also funny with that, if I can say that, is service principal in Azure. If you want to apply conditional access with geo restriction, you need to have an entry P2 to do that. And that is something of expensive, and not all the customers have that. And people can use this service principal from a public Wi-Fi Starbucks connection, for example, or from the library. And after that, that will be game over for you. And if you don't rotate this service principal, that will be also another risk. If you have someone from your team and these people leave your team or your organization and know the service principal secret, is also game over for you. Okay, something similar with AWS, because what is possible to do, it's possible to link an IAM role to your pod, and in this case, that will use the metadata instance to retrieve the authentication token. And in this case, if you have access to a pod and you don't have a network policy to prevent the access to the metadata instance from the pod, you can fetch this credential and use this credential after that. Okay, now if I recap my talk. What is very, very important if you are building a team to do some security assessment, or if you want to do a security assessment, my main recommendation will be to focus on people and not to have people from the same background in the team. That is my main recommendation for that, to have people with different background from dev, cloud SRE, and security, because they will bring different opinion, and also they will have a different approach, and that is what you want to do. After that, as I said in this presentation, clearly define a scope. It's very important to have a defined scope and not to try to target everything, because at the end, that will consume a lot of time for you and you will have nothing in your result. And also begin by checking the public endpoint. All is exposed externally. I believe that is also very important to have a good idea about the external security posture. And after that, focus on the internal posture of your Kubernetes cluster. As I said, review pod privilege, review airbag privilege, and also please review the service account permission associated. That is a key. Review the network policy, and also, if you have time, that is a bonus, try to identify the way to pivot to the cloud provider, because a lot of attackers want to pivot and want to do external movement. And at the end, not the least, what is also very important to do is to take time to explain your report. That is also something of very important, because at the end you are doing this type of security assessment to know the security posture, but also to increase the level of knowledge of your developer, of your team, and try to not to target a team to say, oh yeah, you are doing bad stuff, and what you are doing is something of very bad, because if you try to do that, you will break the trust you have with this team. And at the end, when you have a good maturity level, you will know a lot of finding will bring directly from the SRE, from the developer team, because they are using the platform every day. They know what's happened in the platform better than you. And that's all for me for today. If you have any question, do not hesitate to ask your question. If you're interested to know more about that, I will invite you to connect with me after this presentation or connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, just for your question, be kind because today it's a special day for me. It's my birthday. And yeah, thank you. Any question? Cool. Yeah, one question.
That works. First, thank you for the session, the presentation. It was very informative. I want to ask you a question regarding the amount of tools that we have in order to do the static analysis, dynamic analysis.
Yeah.
Don't you see some of overlap? Because
yes.
we got Trivy, Aqua Security, we got Chekhov from Prisma Cloud in a team. How can we actually take the best of each per sort of specialty instead of like just running? Let's say like if 3 tools do the same, is it beneficial to run them at once, or we just take the best one?
Yeah, I believe it's when you start, it's start only with one tool. And what is very important, because all these projects are open source, check the contribution. And when the last contribution was done, that is something of very important. But after that, no, I believe it's not relevant to use 5 tools to do the same thing. Start with one tool. That will be my key recommendation. In this presentation, why I put multiple tools is because I'm not affiliated with one specific vendor, and I want to stay agnostic. I think someone has another question. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy birthday, first of all. I was curious. Have you heard of Perilous? It's a zero trust kubectl.
Sorry.
Perilous. It's a zero trust kubectl managed by Rafe.
I have never used.
Okay. I was just okay. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
One more, if you allow. One more, please.
Yeah,
One
sure.
more.
If we have 2 minutes. Okay, quick question. Yeah.
Don't you think OIDC is maybe a best way to authenticate identity-based connections instead of having like the issue with the issue.json problem?
Yes, that could be a good solution. Specifically, if you are using an external provider, an external IDP provider, in this case, like for example Okta, that could be a solution. Yeah.